welcome to day 2 of our Book of John series. The Book of John in the Bible gives us the story behind the stories of the Gospels. It's one of the easiest books to read in the Bible. There's a lot of poetry and really beautiful imagery, and it's also one of the most profound books to understand. And today, as we dive into chapter 2, we're going to see from this entire study on John what we can learn about Jesus. And when you read chapter 2, you'll notice that we have two very dramatic stories that are, in a lot of ways, paired up against each other. One is shocking, as in, wow, I can't believe my eyes. The other is shocking, as in, can you believe he just did that? One is festive, the other is violent, but both of these events tell us something about the way Jesus invites us to think about the old and the new. Throughout the entire book of John, you're going to hear about 7 signs that Jesus performs. In other Gospels, you might hear them referred to as miracles, but the author of John uses signs because they point to some truth about Jesus that goes beyond the event itself. And chapters 2 starts with a significant sign where Jesus is attending a wedding in a place called Cana. Now, here's what you need to know about weddings in Jesus' day. These weren't wedding ceremonies that were 30 minutes with a dance to follow on a Saturday in June. They were huge celebrations, and oftentimes the whole community was invited. Sometimes that celebration would last for days, maybe even a week. In fact, a number of cultures around the world, this is still the practice for their weddings. So, this story at the wedding in Cana, the fact that the wine ran out would have been a pretty big deal. And as we read in John chapter 2, verses 6, we read, "Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. And Jesus said to the servants, 'Fill the jars with water.' So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, 'Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet.'" And what's first important to note in those 6 water jars is that they were used for Jewish purification rites. They were required for people to cleanse themselves before they entered the temple. And here, in a completely unexpected way, not only is the water within these jars turned to wine so that there's enough for everyone at the wedding, but it's good wine. It's the best wine, as the master of the banquet points out. So save that image for a minute. New wine in old stone water jars. And now we look at the second part of chapter 2, where now Jesus is going to Jerusalem. And in the temple courts, which are the outer parts of the temple, he finds people selling things like sheep and doves, and they were ultimately selling them to make some good money. It was really common, almost expected, for people to make these long pilgrimages to the temple, which was located in Jerusalem. And there were a lot of rules at this temple. Certain people could pray in one part, and as we talked about with the story in Cana, there were washing and purification rules. And it was also common for people to offer animals as a sacrifice. And in some instances, it was thought that certain animals were worth more of a sacrifice than others. It was kind of an economic thing. And what about the people who couldn't afford the best animal? What should prevent them from receiving the gift of forgiveness and grace from God? So then Jesus goes to the temple during Passover, a Jewish celebration, and it's crowded, it's bustling with people selling animals and changing money. And Jesus is fed up. So now we read back in John chapter 2 in verses 15 and 16. "So he, Jesus, made a whip out of cords and drove all from the temple courts, both sheep and cattle. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned the tables. To those who sold doves, he said, 'Get out of here. Stop turning my Father's house into a market.'" See, this is the action scene where some heads would have really been turned. See, the temple, it had already been destroyed, and it had taken 46 years to be rebuilt. So Jesus stands up to the authorities, and after he's cleared the temples, he says, "Go ahead, destroy them again. I will raise it in 3 days." And then again, the author of John, we read in verse 22, after he was raised from the dead, his disciples recalled what Jesus had said, and then they believed the scripture and the words that Jesus had spoken. He's foreshadowing things that we know now will come from Jesus' death and resurrection. So, what do we do about these two dramatic stories? What do they have to say to us about Jesus, about our faith? I wonder if Jesus is asking, is it time for something new? We all get into routines in our life, even in our faith, and sometimes they're easy and comfortable, but sometimes they also close us off from greater things. We have our blinders on like a horse, and we keep moving forward without seeing the possibilities of the beauty of the periphery. But in the story of the wedding of Cana, Jesus gives people a glimpse of the full and abundant life that comes from him. New wine, the best wine, filled those jars that had previously been limited to one use. And in a temple that had been controlled by power and authority, Jesus reminds us that God is not bound to one place inside a temple in a holy city. God's grace and forgiveness isn't just for people who do things in a certain way or who have money to buy the biggest or best animals to offer as gifts to God. It's free because Jesus gave it to all of us. So today, as you read chapter 2, ask yourself these questions. Number 1, where do you have blinders on in your life? And number 2, what would it mean for Jesus to turn the old into new for you? Thanks so much for watching this day 2 of John with us. We can't wait to see you for day 3.